I'm Tyler, I'm 29, and last night was supposed to be my birthday dinner. The kind where you're surrounded by the people who claim to care about you, eating overpriced food you'd normally never splurge on. Instead, it turned into the kind of night that burns itself into your memory, not because it was special, but because it showed you exactly where you stand with everyone around you. For context, I've been dating Emily for 2.5 years. She's 27, beautiful, smart, the kind of person who can light up a room just by walking into it. At least, that's how I used to describe her when my friends asked. Lately, though, it felt like she was lighting up the room for everyone except me. She'd started hanging out with a new group from her office. People who wore tailored clothes, drove cars with monthly payments higher than my rent, and dropped phrases like equity options and old money like they were inside jokes. Whenever we all went out, I was the quiet one. The guy in construction boots sitting at the edge of their Instagram story. I didn't grow up poor, but I grew up having to think before spending. My dad was a mechanic and my mom worked at a pharmacy. I started working part-time in high school and full-time right after college, doing electrical work for a local contractor. It's honest work, and I make decent money, but not the kind that impresses people like Emily's new friends. She used to love that about me, said it made me real. Somewhere along the way, real became boring. The dinner was her idea. She said she'd planned something classy. I didn't question it because, well, she seemed genuinely excited. She picked the restaurant, a sleek, dimly lit place downtown where even the air felt expensive. I looked up the menu before we went and nearly choked when I saw the prices. But it was my birthday, and she'd said she'd take care of the booking, so I figured maybe she had something planned. When we walked in, I realized it wasn't just the two of us. There were 8 people at the table already, her coworkers and 2 of her close friends. No one from my side. Not my best friend, not even my sister. I thought maybe there was a surprise waiting later, but that was wishful thinking. Tyler, one of her friends, Paige, I think, called out. You clean up nice. It sounded like a compliment, but it came with that polite smirk rich people give when they're amused by something beneath them. Emily smiled at me as we sat down, but she didn't hold my hand or anything. She was busy showing off the bottle of wine she'd ordered ahead of time. This one's from Italy, she said proudly to her friends. You can't even find it here unless you know someone. The waiter poured the wine. Everyone clinked glasses, and I sipped mine quietly, trying to fit in. The conversation floated around promotions, travel, and that insane crypto return last quarter. When Emily's coworker asked what I did, I told him I was an electrical technician. He nodded politely and said, "Oh, cool," before turning back to talk about some merger I'd never heard of. Emily didn't step in or try to include me. She just laughed at their stories. I excused myself to the restroom halfway through dinner just to breathe. I looked at myself in the mirror, button-down shirt, clean shave, decent watch, and thought, you don't belong here, do you? I tried shaking it off. It was my birthday, after all. Maybe I was just overthinking. When I got back, the table was louder. Emily was leaning toward a guy named Ryan, tall, confident, the kind of guy who probably has business cards that don't even list a job title. They were laughing about something, and when she noticed me, she said, "Oh, there he is," in this tone that made me sound like the waiter bringing another round. Dinner went on like that, quiet humiliation disguised as small talk. When the waiter brought out the cake, a fancy layered thing with gold flakes on top, Emily started laughing before the plate even hit the table. "He can't even afford half this place," she said to her friends, like it was some inside joke they all understood. A few of them chuckled awkwardly. One muttered, but she waved them off. Then she lifted her glass, eyes sparkling with something cold, and said, "Consider this my gift. I'm done." She clinked her glass with Ryan's, stood up, and walked out. Just like that. No scene, no yelling, just gone. The waiter looked frozen, holding the cake. The whole table was silent. Paige muttered something like, "Wow," under her breath. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching the candle flicker until it burned itself out. Then I took out my wallet, handed the waiter my card, and paid the $340 bill without a word. When I got outside, I didn't chase her. I didn't text or call. I just walked home in silence, the kind that feels too heavy for one person to carry. This morning, my phone lit up with 17 missed calls and a message from Emily. It said, "Please don't post anything yet. You don't understand." Post what? That's what's been gnawing at me all day. What exactly did she think I'd post? I haven't said a word. Not to her, not to anyone. But now I'm starting to wonder if she did something more than just humiliate me at dinner. Something she's scared will come out. I don't know what she means yet, but I plan to find out. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was still buzzing. Emily had sent more messages overnight, all variations of the same theme. Please, Tyler, let me explain. You don't know the full story. It's not what it looked like. The irony of that hit me hard. Because what I saw at that dinner didn't need any explaining. It was crystal clear. She humiliated me in front of her friends, broke up with me mid-toast, and left me sitting there like a fool. Still, something about that last message, please don't post anything yet, had me uneasy. Post what? I hadn't planned to post anything, but now she'd planted the thought. What was she so afraid of me sharing? I opened Instagram out of curiosity. Her latest story was still up. A boomerang of the dinner table, champagne glasses clinking, with the caption, ending things the classy way sparkles #new beginnings. My name wasn't tagged anywhere. That was the moment it hit me. She wanted it to look like she'd dumped me in some empowering, girl boss kind of way. Like it was her decision, her clean break. She didn't want me to post because she wanted to control the story. I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the day doing what I always did when I needed to clear my head. I worked. I took a job fixing wiring in an old townhouse. It felt good to focus on something tangible, something that didn't involve fake smiles and carefully staged social posts. But even as I worked, my mind kept circling back to that night. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the dinner wasn't an isolated moment. It was just the loudest version of something that had been happening quietly for months, maybe even years. Emily had changed after she got her new job. At first, I was proud of her. She'd worked her way up in marketing, landed a position at a big firm downtown, and started talking about building a network. I encouraged her. I helped her rehearse presentations, proofread her proposals, even helped her move into a new apartment closer to her office. But after that move, something shifted. She started talking differently. Little things, like calling the people she used to hang out with locals, or saying she couldn't wear certain clothes because they looked too basic. She'd joke about how rough my hands were from work or how my truck smelled like wires. At first, I laughed along. I didn't want to seem insecure. But the jokes never stopped. They got sharper. Maybe you should wear a watch without scratches when we go out, she'd say before a dinner. Or, try not to order the cheapest drink on the menu this time, babe. It makes us look weird. Us. That word had started to feel like a costume she wore only when convenient. She began spending weekends networking. That's what she called it. I'd suggest going hiking or cooking dinner together, and she'd reply, "You know how important this is for me." I understood. Ambition isn't a crime. But she'd come home late, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, smiling like she had the world figured out. When I asked about it once, she laughed. "Relax, Tyler. Not everyone's trying to sleep with me." Still, there were cracks in her stories. One weekend, she said she was at a company retreat at a resort an hour away. I believed her until I saw a photo her coworker posted. Same outfit, same background, but the caption tagged a private party at someone's house in the city. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said, "You're overanalyzing again." That phrase, "you're overanalyzing," became her shield. I started to feel like an outsider in my own relationship. My friends noticed too. One night, my buddy Chris pulled me aside. "Man, she's treating you like a project, not a partner," he said. "You sure you're not just holding on because you remember how she used to be?" He wasn't wrong. I kept thinking back to when we first met, when she used to bring me coffee at job sites, when she bragged to her friends about how Tyler can fix anything, when she'd sit cross-legged on the couch, watching me sketch electrical layouts and say, "I love how your brain works." Somewhere along the line, she stopped loving how my brain worked and started loving how other people looked at her. The week leading up to my birthday was tense. She seemed distracted every time we talked. When I asked if she wanted to do something low-key, like a barbecue or a trip to the lake, she smiled and said, "Don't worry about it. I've got plans." She mentioned those plans at least 10 times, each time with a little more smugness. I should have taken it as a warning. 2 days before the dinner, she called me at work. "Hey, just a heads up," she said. "I invited some of my friends to your birthday dinner. I think it'll be fun to mix groups." Mix groups? She never even asked if my friends could come. I started to suggest inviting them, but she cut me off. "Oh, it's a small reservation. You'll love everyone there, though. I should have known better, but I told myself maybe she was trying to surprise me. The night of the dinner, when she introduced me to everyone, she didn't even say, "This is my boyfriend." She said, "This is Tyler, the birthday boy." It was subtle, but it stung. She used to introduce me with pride. Now I was just a punchline in an expensive restaurant. What made it worse was how her friends looked at me, polite smiles, half listening when I spoke, eyes darting toward Emily for social cues. When I cracked a light joke about how confusing their corporate jargon was, one of them, Ryan, smirked and said, "Don't worry, man. You're the muscle. We're the spreadsheets." Everyone laughed. Even Emily. That was the first cut. The cake comment was just the knife twisting. After the dinner, when she walked out, something strange happened. Her friend Paige stayed behind. As I was signing the bill, she leaned toward me and said quietly, "She shouldn't have done that. Just so you know, she's not who you think she is." Then she left. That sentence replayed in my head all night. Over the next few days, I tried to move on. I deleted our photos, boxed up her things, and told myself it was over. But she wouldn't stop calling. Each voicemail sounded more desperate than the last. One message said, "Tyler, please, just hear me out. It's not about you, I swear. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I had to do it." Had to. That line stuck out. On the fourth day, I finally answered. She sounded breathless, like she'd been crying. "Thank God you picked up," she said. "What do you want, Emily?" "I just need to explain. I think the restaurant made your point pretty clear." "It wasn't what it looked like," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. She hesitated. "Things got complicated at work." "Complicated how?" She went quiet. I could hear her pacing. "You remember Ryan?" Of course I remembered Ryan. The guy she toasted with while dumping me. "Yeah." She sighed. "He's my boss." I blinked. "Your boss? You told me he was just a coworker." "He was, but he got promoted recently. There's been tension between us. People at work started rumors, and I had to do something to make it look like." "Like what?" I snapped. "That you're too good for me? That humiliating me in public would fix your office politics." "Tyler, please." "If I didn't, they would have thought I was." She stopped herself again. "Sleeping with him?" I finished. She didn't answer. That was enough of an answer. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from something colder, realization. She didn't just betray me. She used me. I was the scapegoat in her little performance to keep her reputation spotless. But the story didn't end there. That same evening, I got a notification on my work phone, a tagged photo. Emily and Ryan, smiling at a corporate event, holding hands. Caption, "Power couple energy." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was heartbroken, but because of the comments. One of her co-workers wrote, "So glad you finally went public. Guess the rumors were true." She'd lied to me again. The next morning, Paige, the same friend who'd whispered to me at the restaurant, sent me a message on Facebook. "Hey, I don't know if I should tell you this, but you deserve to know what really happened." I clicked on the message, heart pounding. What she sent made my stomach drop. Screenshots, conversations, photos, and one voice memo. Emily's voice, saying things I never thought I'd hear from her. About me, about that night, about why she really wanted to end things the way she did. And that was the moment I realized she hadn't just disrespected me. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But I'll get to that part soon. Because what came next, that's when everything really started unraveling. I sat in my apartment for a long time after Paige's message came in. My phone just sat there on the table, screen glowing, her name hovering over that little blue, one new message. I don't know why I hesitated to open it. Maybe because some part of me was still clinging to the idea that this was all just a misunderstanding, that Emily hadn't really meant to humiliate me, that she wasn't the cold, manipulative person she was starting to look like. But the truth doesn't wait forever. I finally opened the chat. The first thing I saw was a wall of screenshots, text messages, group chats, and snippets of conversations from her coworkers. My name popped up in a few of them, Tyler, always followed by a joke or a mocking emoji. Paige wrote, "I'm sending this because I can't keep watching her act like the victim. You didn't deserve what happened." The first screenshot was from the week before my birthday dinner. Emily had messaged a group chat titled "Friday Crew Nail Polish Sparkles," all the same people who were at the dinner. She'd written, "I'm finally ending it with Tyler this weekend. I want to make it clear it's over. No drama, just a clean break. He'll be fine. He's too nice to cause a scene." Underneath, Someone asked, "You're doing it at dinner?" Savage face with tears of joy. Emily replied, "Yeah, public setting equals no arguments. Plus, he'll probably still pay the bill lol." My stomach turned. She had planned that. The whole thing. The dinner, the timing, the humiliation. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was choreographed. Another screenshot showed her chatting privately with Ryan, the boss. He'd written, "You sure you want to do it like that? Seems harsh." And she replied, "Trust me, it'll make everything easier. Once he's out of the picture, we can finally stop pretending." Pretending. That word hit me harder than I expected. Pretending? For how long? Then came the voice memo. Paige's message said, "Listen to this one. It's from after the dinner." She didn't know I was still around. I hesitated, then pressed play. Emily's voice filled the room. Calm, cold, and unmistakably hers. He didn't even say anything. Just sat there. You should have seen their faces when I walked out. Priceless. It's better this way. I can't be seen with someone like that if I want people to take me seriously at work. And besides, you know how corporate is. Image matters. Someone else laughed faintly in the background. Then she added, "He'll move on. He's used to settling." That last sentence was the kind of thing that doesn't just sting, it leaves a mark. I replayed it 3 times, not because I needed to hear it again, but because I didn't believe I had heard it right the first time. I sat there for hours, scrolling through the screenshots. It became clear that my relationship had been over long before that dinner. She'd been seeing Ryan for months. There were photos of them together, coffee shops, rooftops, his office after hours, all hidden carefully enough that no one outside their circle would know. She hadn't broken up with me to protect her reputation. She had done it to launch her new one, the perfect power couple image she and Ryan were trying to sell to the world. And I was just collateral damage. What broke me wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was how ordinary she made it sound. Like discarding me was just another step in her career plan. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every conversation we'd ever had in my head, every little moment that had felt off. The nights she said she was working late, the sudden distance, the way she'd flinch when I mentioned visiting her office. It all added up now, but it got worse. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. I hadn't told her about the breakup yet. I didn't want to deal with the sympathy, but her tone was different. "Tyler, honey," she said carefully, "I just saw something online. Are you okay?" I opened my phone, dreading what she might be talking about. There it was, a post on LinkedIn, of all places. A professional announcement from Emily. The headline read, "Excited to start a new chapter, both personally and professionally, with Ryan as we continue building something great together." The post had a photo attached, her in a sleek black dress, Ryan's arm around her, both smiling like they'd just won an award. The caption ended with, "Sometimes you have to let go of what's comfortable to reach for what's meant for you." And the comments. God, the comments. Her co-workers congratulating them, people writing, "So inspiring," and "Love wins." But buried in the replies, I saw something that made my blood run cold. One of her friends had commented, "Wait, wasn't this the guy you were dating during that transformation year?" Eyes. And Emily had replied with a laughing emoji and said, "Long story. Let's just say some people are better suited for smaller dreams." I don't remember what I did right after that. I think I just sat there staring at the screen, numb. Every time I thought I'd reached the bottom, she found a new way to dig deeper. I didn't respond publicly, but the world is small and news travels fast. By lunchtime, even people from my job had seen it. One of the guys on my crew walked up to me quietly and said, "Hey man, you okay? That's messed up." I shrugged it off, but inside I felt something shift. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done being sad. The humiliation had burned itself out and left something sharper behind. But the universe wasn't finished twisting the knife yet. That evening, I got a message from an unknown number. It said, "Hey Tyler, I know this is weird, but can we talk? I think you should see something." I replied, "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately. "This is Claire. I used to work with Emily and Ryan." She sent a screenshot, an email thread between Emily and HR. It was about a conflict of interest in managing optics. I didn't understand at first, but Claire filled in the blanks. Apparently, Emily and Ryan's relationship wasn't supposed to happen. Company policy forbade managers from dating subordinates. But instead of admitting to it, Emily had spun a story that painted me as a jealous, obsessive ex who couldn't handle her success. According to Claire, Emily had told HR that I'd been showing up at her workplace and sending angry messages. None of that was true. I'd never even been near her office. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was strategic. She'd used me as a scapegoat again, this time to cover up her own misconduct. Claire told me that HR was doing a quiet inquiry into her relationship with Ryan and that Emily was nervous I might go public with something, which explained that strange text, "Please don't post anything yet." She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about her career. The worst part? I had evidence now, all of it. The screenshots, the voice memo, even messages confirming that she'd manipulated HR, enough to ruin her carefully curated image. But I didn't do anything that night. I just sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding with that strange mix of anger and heartbreak that makes it hard to breathe. It's one thing to be dumped. It's another to be betrayed. But to be turned into the villain in someone else's story, that's the kind of thing that changes you. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I ignored her calls. She left voicemails that swung between guilt and panic. "Tyler, please don't tell anyone. You could really mess things up for me," she said in one. In another, she cried, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just needed people to stop asking questions." Every time I listened, I felt less sympathy. Then, a week later, I got an email at work. The subject line read, "Regarding your recent behavior." My stomach dropped. I opened it and froze. It was from her company's HR department. They said they'd received a formal complaint about harassment and defamation, and that I was being advised to refrain from any further attempts to contact or disparage Ms. H or her colleagues. She'd filed a complaint against me. It was the final twist of the knife. I hadn't even spoken to her since that one phone call. She was trying to silence me before I could defend myself. Before the truth came out, that's when something inside me clicked. It wasn't rage, not really. It was focus. A calm, deliberate kind of anger. Because if she wanted to turn me into the villain in her story, then maybe it was time she learned what happens when the villain finally decides to write his own version. And that's where everything started to change, slowly, quietly, and completely in my control. The following week was the kind of blur that doesn't feel like time passing, more like time pressing down on you. Everything I did felt mechanical. Wake up, go to work, come home, stare at my phone, repeat. I stopped talking to most people. Even Chris, my best friend, backed off after a few unanswered texts. I didn't blame him. I wouldn't have known what to say either. How do you explain that your ex not only humiliated you in public, but also managed to turn your silence into ammunition? The HR email haunted me. I read it over and over, every line written in that cold, professional tone that makes you feel guilty even when you haven't done anything wrong. It has come to our attention that you may be engaging in behavior that could be construed as harassment or defamation against one of our employees. I hadn't contacted Emily. Not once. I hadn't posted, messaged, or even liked a single thing about her since that night. But somehow, she'd twisted reality into her own protection. And the worst part was, she was good at it. She'd always known how to play people, how to smile just right, how to sound reasonable, even while lying straight through her teeth. I started worrying that her story might spread beyond her company. What if it reached mine? What if one of her coworkers had friends in the same industry? I worked for a contractor that handled large-scale projects. Word travels fast in construction. The last thing I needed was some rumor that I was harassing a corporate exec. Every day after work, I'd check my email expecting to see something worse. A complaint to my boss. A letter from a lawyer. Something. Nothing came, just silence. Which was almost worse. At night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that restaurant. The candle flickering, her smirk as she raised the glass, the sound of laughter fading behind her as she walked out. It replayed like a cruel highlight reel. I stopped eating properly. Coffee replaced meals. I lost track of days. My apartment started to look like my head felt, cluttered, neglected, dim. It was a Friday night when I hit what I think was my lowest point. I was sitting on my couch, half drunk on cheap whiskey, scrolling through social media like I was trying to find proof that the world hadn't completely turned against me. That's when I saw it, Emily's new post. A professionally shot photo of her and Ryan at some charity gala. She was in a glittering dress, he in a tux. The caption read, "When you find someone who matches your ambition, Everything falls into place. Dizzy hashtag power couple hashtag grateful. The comments were full of praise. You two are goals. So inspiring. Meant to be. I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot it. I just stared. Not at her, but at me, the reflection in my TV screen. The guy who'd been sitting in the dark for weeks, letting someone else write his story. And for the first time since that dinner, I realized I didn't want pity anymore. I didn't even want revenge, not yet. I just wanted clarity. That weekend, I packed a small bag and drove out to my parents' place. They live about an hour away, in a quiet town where the loudest thing at night is the wind against the trees. I hadn't seen them since before the breakup, mostly because I didn't want to explain anything. When I walked in, my mom's eyes went wide. "Tyler," she said softly, putting a hand to her chest. "You look exhausted." I shrugged. Been a long few weeks. She didn't ask for details, just hugged me like she was afraid I might break. My dad, who's never been one for emotional displays, just nodded from the couch. "You look like hell, son," he said. "Want a beer?" That night, we sat outside on the porch in the cool air. I told them everything. Every humiliating detail. The dinner, the posts, the HR email, even the voice memo Paige had sent. My mom cried quietly halfway through. My dad just stared out into the dark, jaw tight. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then my dad finally said, "You know what your mistake was, kid?" I looked up, ready for some lecture about being too trusting. But he surprised me. "You kept thinking she was playing the same game you were," he said. "You were trying to love her. She was trying to win." That stuck with me. He took a sip of his beer. People like that, they build their lives like PR campaigns. Every move they make, every word, it's all for show. And when someone doesn't fit that story anymore, they rewrite the script. My mom wiped her eyes. "You don't have to fight her, sweetheart. Just walk away. Let her world fall apart on its own." I wanted to believe that was enough, walking away. But I also knew Emily. Her world didn't fall apart on its own. It was built on other people's backs. And I'd been the last one she stood on. Still, I stayed for the weekend. Helped Dad fix the garage door, cooked breakfast with Mom, slept better than I had in weeks. There was something healing about being around people who didn't care about status or appearances. When I got home on Sunday night, I felt a little steadier. I decided to start cleaning my apartment. Not just the dishes and the laundry, but the digital clutter too, deleting old photos, blocking numbers, unsubscribing from anything that made my chest tighten. That's when I found something strange. In my email spam folder, buried between junk promotions, there was a message titled, "Important, Confidential HR Follow-up." It was from a generic corporate address, but the footer said it belonged to Emily's company. Curious, I opened it. The message said, "This communication is to notify the involved party, Tyler H., that the internal investigation into Ms. H.'s conduct has concluded. Due to confidentiality, we cannot disclose details, but no further action is required on your part." I blinked. Investigation? What investigation? It didn't make sense, unless someone had actually reported her. Maybe Claire. Maybe Paige. I forwarded the email to myself and sat there for a few minutes, heart racing. It was vague, but it meant something had shifted. That night, I started thinking, not just about what she'd done, but why she'd panicked so much after the dinner. She wasn't scared I'd post a rant. She was scared I'd post proof. And I had plenty of that now. Still, I didn't move right away. For the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding myself piece by piece. I picked up extra jobs, went back to the gym, reconnected with Chris and a few old friends. I stopped checking her social media. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing. About a month later, while grabbing coffee before a job, I heard someone say her name. I turned and saw two people sitting by the window, both dressed in office clothes. One of them was scrolling through a phone, whispering, "Did you see what happened to Emily's guy?" The other raised an eyebrow. "Ryan." "Yeah, he's on leave. HR found out everything. The emails, the trips, the expense reports. She's apparently been crying in her car every lunch break." I didn't mean to listen, but I couldn't move. They kept talking, casually, like it was office gossip. Apparently, Ryan had been caught expensing business trips that were actually getaways with Emily. And once HR started digging, they found out she'd falsified some reports too, trying to make it look like their relationship started after his promotion, not before. It was unraveling. I paid for my coffee and walked out into the cold morning air. For the first time since that night, I smiled. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because maybe karma didn't need my help after all. Still, I couldn't shake one thought. She's probably blaming me again. That evening, I checked my messages for the first time in weeks. There they were, 4 new voicemails. All from her. The latest one was from that morning. Her voice cracked through the speaker. "Tyler, please, if you know anything about what's happening, just stop. They're turning on me. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. I panicked. Please call me." I sat there listening. Not angry this time. Not even hurt. Just done. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after you've lost everything you thought mattered. You stop trying to fix things. You start seeing clearly. That night, I poured myself a glass of water, sat at my desk, and opened a blank document. Not for revenge, not yet, but for something that would make everything make sense. I started writing down dates, messages, screenshots, a timeline of everything that had happened, from the first lie to the last voicemail. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it yet. All I knew was that if she wanted to make me the villain, I'd make sure she finally understood who she was up against. Quietly, patiently, because walking away doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes, it's just stepping back far enough to aim properly. The next few months changed everything. It didn't happen suddenly. There was no dramatic music or cinematic montage. It was small choices adding up, quiet mornings turning into productive days, and the strange, steady feeling of finally being free from someone who made me feel like I had to apologize just for existing. Work became my escape at first. I started taking every project I could, even the messy ones other guys didn't want. My boss, Rick, noticed. "You've been on fire lately," he said one afternoon as we were rewiring an office complex downtown. "You thinking of going out on your own or something?" At first, I laughed it off, but the idea stuck. I'd been saving for years, quietly, steadily, the way you do when you grow up watching your parents stretch every paycheck. I'd planned to use that money for a down payment on a house someday. But now, I had something else in mind. 2 months later, I filed for my business license, Harrison Electrical and Systems. It felt strange seeing my name on paperwork that didn't belong to anyone else's company. It was mine. Starting small, I began with local contracts, fixing wiring in older homes, installing security systems for small businesses. But word spread fast, and soon I was getting calls from commercial clients too. Rick even referred me a few jobs himself, saying, "You're too good to stay under someone else's name forever." Within half a year, I'd hired 2 full-time guys and leased a small workspace near the industrial park. The first time I saw my new logo on the van, clean blue lettering, bold against the white paint, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Pride. There's something healing about building something tangible after being broken down by someone who only cared about appearances. Emily's world had been built on image. Mine was built on work. Real, honest work. The first time I saw one of my vans parked outside a downtown building, I just stood there for a minute. Watching the reflection in the glass, I realized I didn't look like the same guy who'd sat silent in that restaurant months ago. My clothes were cleaner, my posture straighter. I had that quiet confidence that comes from knowing you earned everything yourself. Around that time, I ran into Chris again. He'd been cautious at first, didn't want to bring up Emily, but when he saw how I was doing, he grinned. "Damn, man. You really flipped the script, huh?" I shrugged, smiling. "Guess you could say that." He laughed. "She ever reach out again?" I hesitated. "Once or twice. Haven't responded." "Good," he said. "Let her watch from the sidelines." And that's exactly what started to happen. Because one night, completely by accident, I found out that Emily's new company had signed a contract with one of my new clients, a real estate development firm I'd been wiring properties for. At first, I didn't think much of it. Different departments, big company. Our paths probably wouldn't cross. But then, one morning, I got an email from their project manager. "Hi Tyler, just confirming tomorrow's meeting with our marketing liaison. She'll be joining to discuss the office renovation timelines." I didn't pay attention to the name. I just marked it on my calendar and went back to work. The next day, I showed up early, coffee in one hand, portfolio in the other, ready to pitch the new electrical layout. The conference room was mostly empty when I arrived, except for one woman standing near the window, looking out over the city. She turned around when she heard the door open. Emily. For a second, neither of us said anything. She looked almost the same, polished, poised, but there was something different about her now. The confidence she used to wear like armor looked cracked. Her eyes flicked to the company logo on my shirt, and I watched realization sink in. Tyler, she said quietly. Emily. I set my folder down on the table like it was any other meeting. Didn't expect to see you here. She blinked. You work with Hamilton Developments now. I own the contract, I said. Harrison Electrical. I'm handling the entire system's renovation. Her lips parted slightly, like she didn't know what to say. For once, she looked unsure of herself. Before she could respond, the project manager walked in. Oh good. You two have met, she said cheerfully, oblivious to the tension. Emily will be handling the marketing rollout for this site. Tyler, you're in charge of the technical side. Looks like we'll be working closely together. Emily forced a polite smile. Of course, she said softly. That'll be nice. The meeting went on like nothing had happened, but underneath the surface, the dynamic had completely shifted. She tried to sound professional, but her voice wavered whenever she had to address me. I kept my tone calm, steady, completely detached. When it ended, she lingered by the door. Tyler, she said, lowering her voice. Can we talk for a minute? Please. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once made me feel small now seemed fragile. Desperate, even. I don't think that's necessary, I said evenly. Everything that needs to be said was already said. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Right, she murmured. Of course. I walked out before she could say anything else. That night, though, I couldn't help but think about how far things had come. Just a few months ago, I'd been sitting alone, humiliated. Now, I was the one walking away, not out of spite, but out of strength. The next few weeks only added to that feeling. My company started growing faster than I could have imagined. We landed a big municipal contract, streetlight installations across several neighborhoods, and suddenly, I wasn't just getting by. I was thriving. One evening, I checked my business account and saw a number I'd never seen before, 5 digits after expenses. I stared at it for a long time, smiling. Not because of the money itself, but because I knew exactly what it represented. Every insult, every time I'd been underestimated, every moment she'd made me feel small, turned into something solid. And yet, even as life was improving, a part of me couldn't help but notice the irony. The more I succeeded, the more Emily seemed to fade. I hadn't looked at her social media in months, but curiosity got the better of me one night. Her profile, once full of glamour shots and event photos, was quieter now. The comments were fewer. The tone different, more defensive. Her latest post read, "Sometimes life teaches you humility the hard way. Grateful for growth." There were no photos of Ryan, no fancy events. Just her, sitting at a cafe, eyes tired, smile forced. I scrolled down and noticed that her old power couple posts had vanished. Deleted. Paige messaged me around that time too. She said Emily and Ryan had both been demoted after the HR investigation. Conflict of interest, unethical behavior. The usual corporate phrases for when someone's image collapses. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt done. Because the truth is, by the time you reach the point where you don't need revenge anymore, you've already won. Still, fate has a sense of humor. A few weeks later, I was invited to a networking dinner by one of my new clients. It was at the same restaurant, that restaurant, the one where Emily had ended things. When I walked in this time, the waiter greeted me by name. Mr. Harrison, welcome back. Table for 3. I smiled. Yeah, table for 3. The evening went smoothly. Good food, good conversation, business cards exchanged. And as the waiter brought the check, I realized something. The total, $340. The exact same amount I'd paid that night months ago. This time, though, I didn't feel small when I handed over my card. I felt in control. And as I walked out into the night, the city lights reflecting off the windows, I couldn't help but think. Maybe this was what real revenge looked like. Not shouting, not exposing someone online, but standing taller while they vanished into the noise. But as it turned out, Emily wasn't done disappearing quietly. Because a few days later, she sent me an email. Subject line, "Please, I need your help." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. And what I found inside was something I never saw coming. I didn't open Emily's email right away. I just sat there staring at it, the subject line glowing on my screen. Please, I need your help. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who'd once looked at me like I was beneath her was now asking for help. I hovered over the message for a minute before curiosity got the better of me. It started off desperate. Tyler, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but please hear me out. I'm in trouble. Ryan's been fired, and the company's investigating me again because someone's accusing me of falsifying documents. I didn't do it, at least not how they think. I just need advice. You're the only one who knows how this started. Please, can we talk? I'll meet you anywhere. I leaned back in my chair, rereading it slowly. She didn't want help. She wanted damage control. She thought I could somehow bail her out or give her something to use in her defense. And that's when it hit me. I had all the proof she was terrified of, the screenshots, the voice memos, even the HR letter confirming an internal investigation. She had tried to ruin me publicly, but what she didn't realize was that she'd left a trail of her own lies behind. So, I decided it was time to finally take control. Calmly, quietly, and in a way that wouldn't make me look like the villain she painted me to be. I replied with one short line. Sure, Emily. Let's talk. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. I showed up early, sitting in the corner booth, the same way I used to wait for her years ago. Except this time, I wasn't nervous. I was focused. She arrived 5 minutes late, wearing a blazer that looked too expensive for her current situation. Her hair was tied up, and she had that polished look again, but her hands were shaking when she set her purse down. Tyler, she said softly. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, not smiling. You said you needed help. She sighed, staring into her cup. Everything's falling apart. After they found out about Ryan, they've been watching everything I do. Someone's trying to make it look like I forged his approval on expense reports. I swear I didn't. I just reused some old templates. They're threatening to press charges. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't interrupt. I let her talk, let her twist in her own panic. Finally, she looked at me and said, You still have those screenshots, don't you? The ones Paige sent you. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because if I can prove the company knew about me and Ryan before they claim they did, it'll show I wasn't lying. I could clear my name. I almost laughed. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was just scared of the consequences. I might still have them, I said slowly, but I'm not sure they'd help you. Tyler, please. She leaned forward, desperation bleeding through her voice. You have no idea what this is doing to me. I'm about to lose everything. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, You already did. Her face fell. You're really not going to help me? I took a deep breath and pulled out a small folder from my bag, the one I'd brought for this exact moment. I slid it across the table. That's for you. She hesitated before opening it. Inside were printed copies of the screenshots, the voice memo transcript, and a note on top in my handwriting. It said, Here's what I have. You can use it however you want, but you should know it's also going to HR's ethics department tomorrow morning. Her head snapped up. You can't. I already did, I said evenly. I sent them the full timeline this morning, along with a statement explaining how you lied to cover your relationship and tried to file a false complaint against me. You wanted to control the narrative. Now it's out of your hands. Her lip trembled. You're ruining me. I shook my head. No, Emily. You ruined yourself. I just stopped protecting you. She stared at me, speechless. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to scream, but instead, she closed the folder, stood up, and whispered, You'll regret this. I watched her walk out of the cafe, the door chime ringing softly behind her. The next day, I got a call from Paige. She sounded stunned. Tyler, whatever you did, it worked. HR reopened the case. Emily's been suspended pending a legal review. Ryan's gone completely off the grid. I didn't say much, just a quiet. Thanks for letting me know. A week later, my phone buzzed again, this time with an email from someone in corporate compliance. They thanked me for providing documentation relevant to an internal ethics review and confirmed that my prior name had been cleared of all false allegations. It was official, my record was clean, but that wasn't the real win. A few months later, I got an unexpected call from the same real estate firm that had hired me before. Tyler, the project manager said, We're expanding. We're cutting ties with our old marketing agency, the one Emily worked with. We'd like to bring your company in for long-term contracts. Your professionalism stood out. I couldn't help but smile. I'd be happy to. That one contract doubled my revenue. Within 6 months, I was hiring more people, upgrading equipment, and finally taking weekends off without guilt. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that dinner, that one moment where she tried to destroy me publicly for her own image. And now, years later, my company's logo hung in the same buildings her name had been quietly erased from. I never posted anything about what happened. No revenge thread, no viral expose. I didn't need to. People talk, and eventually, her story got out anyway. The last I heard, Emily had left the city. Some said she was freelancing. Others said she was trying to rebrand herself. Me? I didn't look back. Because the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's living in a way that makes them irrelevant. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. But there was one last twist I didn't see coming. One final message that landed in my inbox months later, just when I thought it was all over. It wasn't from Emily this time. It was from someone else. Someone who knew what she'd done and wanted to make me an offer. The message came from a corporate investigator named Laura Chun, a senior compliance officer from Emily's old firm. Her tone was formal but polite. "Mr. Harrison, we wanted to personally thank you for your cooperation during our internal review earlier this year. Your documentation was essential in confirming several breaches of conduct. As a courtesy, we thought you should know the final outcome." I read the rest slowly. Emily had been formally terminated for misconduct, falsification of records, and misuse of company resources. Ryan had resigned during the process, but not before being blacklisted from several major firms for violating executive ethics policies. The investigation had even reached investors, and a few big accounts had pulled out. In short, the empire she'd built on lies had collapsed completely. At the end of the message, there was one last line that almost made me laugh out loud. "Ms. H. requested that we pass along a personal statement of apology to you. Please confirm if you'd like to receive it." I sat back in my chair for a long time. There was a version of me, the old me, who would have said yes, just to hear her squirm. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I typed one line back. "No need. I already heard everything I needed to." And that was the end of it. Over the next year, my business kept growing. I moved into a proper office space, hired 5 new technicians, and even partnered with a few developers across the city. Clients trusted me, not because I talked big, but because I delivered. Every wire I ran, every project I finished, felt like another brick laid in a foundation she could never touch again. Sometimes, though, I'd catch her name floating through conversations. "You remember Emily H? What happened to her?" And every time, the story got sadder. After losing her job, she tried starting a PR consultancy but couldn't keep clients. Eventually, she moved back in with her parents in a small town 2 hours away. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. There's a kind of justice that doesn't need witnesses, just silence and time. One evening, nearly a year to the day after that infamous dinner, I found myself back at the same restaurant again. This time, not for business. My crew had surprised me with a company anniversary dinner, our way of celebrating the milestone of 1 year in business. As I sat at the same table where she'd once humiliated me, I realized something had come full circle. Back then, I was the quiet one, the outsider pretending to fit in. Now, the waiter greeted me by name, and the owner himself came over to shake my hand. My guys laughed, told stories, raised glasses. The room that had once felt cold now felt warm, alive. At the end of the night, the waiter brought out a small cake with a single candle. "On the house," he said. "For luck." I smiled, looked at the candlelight flickering on the frosting, and thought about everything that had happened. The fall, the rebuilding, the rise. I made a wish. Not for revenge, not for success, but for peace. Then I blew out the candle. As the smoke curled upward and disappeared, I finally felt it. Closure. Some people spend their whole lives chasing payback, thinking it'll make them whole. But the truth is, the best revenge isn't about making them fall. It's about rising so high, they can't even see where you went. And as I walked out into the night, the city lights reflected off the glass doors behind me. And for the first time, I didn't look back.